I'm gonna tell you everything you need to do in order to run a marathon under 3 hours. The sub 3 marathon is a major goal held by many serious runners, but only about 4% of marathon finishers each year are able to achieve this time. So yeah, sub 3 is no walk in the park. Running this fast requires a good deal of commitment and dedication to your training. You cannot get away with running 2 or 3 days per week. Really, you should almost be running every day, if not 6 days. But for most men with enough time and consistency and dedication, I really think that this is an achievable time. I'm gonna go relatively fast through each tip in the video, but I really feel like each tip could be its own video. So if you guys have any interest in me making any more videos specifically on any of these tips, just let me know. Number 1, get your weekly mileage up to at least 50 miles per week. If you're brand new to running, this is certainly going to take a while, but you want to make sure you have plenty of time to slowly build up your mileage. You can typically add about 5 to 10 miles each week to your training load, provided that you're going to be taking some down weeks every few weeks to, recover your body. Now, a lot of this will depend on how resistant you are to injury and what exactly your athletic background is. Play around with how many miles you run each week. It may take up to a year or even longer to comfortably build up to this 50 mile per week pace. The key here is consistency. 50 isn't necessarily the magic number you need. It's more important that you're consistently hitting solid mile weeks. So it might be 40 for you, it might be 60. Find a number that works, but again, generally, I do recommend at least hitting this 50 mile per week pace. By far, the most important component of marathon running success is increasing your weekly volume. 2, structure your weekly training appropriately. This includes sprinkling in quality workout days and long runs along with your standard easy days. When I say you should be running 50 miles per week, that does not mean you should be running exactly, 7.1, 7.2 miles per day. Your weekly running plan starting roughly 3 to 4 months out from your target race should generally be structured around one quality workout in the middle of the week, and then generally one long run during the weekend. Here's an example breakdown of a 50-mile marathon training week. On Monday, target an easy run around 6 to 8 miles. As far as pace for these easy runs, really, you should only be worried about going too fast. Try to keep it in the conversational pace range. The purpose of these runs really is to just maintain your aerobic fitness and get your body used to just covering miles each day. Again, there's no reason to push these too hard. Really, there's no reason to run any faster than like 7:15 pace at the fastest. I do a lot of these, 7:30 to 8 minutes if you need to. You're only gonna be risking injury if you overdo it. Either injury or overtraining or just burning out. So then on Tuesday, you're gonna do a very similar thing, maybe an even shorter run around 6 miles, maybe 7, real easy pace again. Now, Wednesday is a great day to get one of your quality workout sessions in. There's a few types of quality workouts that I recommend and that I do for marathon training. Those are tempos, fartleks, and repeats, or intervals. You're gonna wanna kind of cycle through which type of quality workout you do each week because each different type has its own purpose. A good example of a tempo workout would be a 2-mile warm-up followed by a 20-minute run around 6:20 to 6:30 pace, ending with a 2-mile cooldown. A fartlek workout consists of a certain time or distance spent running at a faster pace, immediately followed by a period of time where you spend typically jogging. My favorite fartlek would be to do 4 times 4 minutes on, 2 minutes off, and then maybe at the 4 minutes on, you're targeting about 6:15 per mile pace. And obviously the 2 minutes off, just real easy jog, 8-minute plus pace if you need. This is a workout I do several times throughout my marathon buildup. Lastly, on interval days, it's kind of similar to fartleks. You're targeting a specific distance or time period where you are going to be running fast, and then you're taking a certain break where your rest is a little bit more lenient. So you can walk, you can shake out your legs. You're not necessarily going right into a jog like a fartlek. A typical example of this is like 3 by mile repeats. Maybe you're targeting the mile at 6 minutes or 6:15, and you're taking 3 minutes rest in between each mile you run. So typically for these Wednesday workouts, you're gonna be hitting about 8 miles total. So on Thursday and Friday, you're gonna come back with 2 easier runs, again, kind of in that 6 to 8 mile range. You might wanna take your shorter run, immediately following your workout on Wednesday. So maybe Thursday, you're just doing like 5 or 6, and then Friday, you come back with 7 or 8. Now Saturday comes around, and this is typically the day I like to target my long run. Long runs are a little difficult to explain. Sometimes you're just trying to get out there to get time on the feet for your long run. Other times you try to sprinkle in a little bit of faster pace running. Your long run may range generally from 12 miles to 20 miles, which is what I recommend to be the longest run of your marathon training cycle. I don't really think it's a good idea to go over 20 miles until race race day. I feel like you risk injury. A lot of people like to do 22 milers a few weeks leading up before the race. I think it's a little bit too much. It's kind of overkill. I would just recommend sticking with 20 miles. So say you completed a 14-mile long run on Saturday. On Sunday, you're really going to want to take it easy. A lot of times I'll just do like 3 to 4 miles. Don't even worry about pace. A lot of times above 8-minute pace. Or you can also have the option of taking the day completely off. A lot of times what I do is one week I'll run, 3-4 miles. Next week I'll take off, and I'll kind of cycle back and forth like that. So I'm getting basically one rest day every 2 weeks. And really there you have it. That's your typical marathon training week. Ranging between 48 and 52 miles around there. Also, I want to mention it might be a good idea for you to race a half marathon about 4 to 6 weeks out from your marathon race. This will give your body a good indication of what kind of shape you're in and if you're really close to hitting that sub 3-hour marathon. So if you're going to race one of these, obviously you're going to want to target under an hour and a half for the half marathon. I would say even closer to an hour 27, hour 28, around there. If you're able to hit that time, you're on track for the sub 3. Tip number 3 is sleeping and eating. So outside of actually running, sleeping and eating are the 2 most important things you can do to get better at running. Please do not overlook these 2 variables during your marathon training. Please do not. Please don't. They are very important. So there's no need to keep like a really strict diet or anything. The most important thing is that you're basically getting in enough food at balanced periods of time. 3 meals a day if you can. Please do not fast. Don't eat like complete junk. Don't be an idiot. So then when it comes to sleep, you need to be getting a bare minimum of 7 hours of sleep per night, preferably 8 or more. 8 or 9 if you can. Don't think that you can be getting 6 hours of sleep per night and be completely fine throughout the bulk of your training. It's not gonna work. You're gonna get injured, you're gonna burn out, you're gonna go crazy, I promise. Everybody has time for it. You can fit in your 7 hours plus of sleep, okay? Shut TikTok off the phone, turn the TV off, get rid of all your blue light, settle down before you go to bed, get your hours of sleep, I promise. It's not just for marathon training. You will feel better through every other part of your day. Overall, if you neglect your sleep or your diet, your running training day to day basically becomes pointless. But if you had to pick, it is easier to outrun a bad diet than a bad bedtime. 4 is shoes. Please do not be running in the shoes that you were wearing in your glory days in high school. Please make sure you have a nice new pair of shoes to run in. Your knees, your joints, your body will thank me later. So it's wise to replace your running shoes about every 400 to 500 miles. It does kind of depend on what shoe you're wearing. Once the tread starts to go, it's time to get a new pair of shoes. Please do not run on old shoes. You're just risking yourself for injury. Running 50 miles a week is not easy. You need a good pair of shoes to do so. Another thing that goes along with this tip is if you're able to run on like soft surfaces, short grass, limestone, dirt paths, stuff like that, that is going to be extremely good for training. It's going to be a lot less stress on your joints with each step. Please take full advantage of being able to run on soft surface if you can. 5 is including some component of stretching, mobility, and core work into your running routine. So running obviously is not always super easy on the body. More times than not, you're going to be sore in your hamstrings, your quads, your glutes, your back. You're running 50 miles a week, you're going to get sore at some point. So yeah, adding in some stretching after you run for 5 minutes, doing some 10-minute core sessions a couple times a week is certainly not going to hurt your training. It's going to strengthen up all those weak muscles that running kind of neglects that you need to strengthen. And a lot of times I find myself like recovery techniques, rolling out my legs, elevating my legs at night, taking ice baths occasionally, icing any areas that are painful. Little things like that just kind of bring down the risk of injury a little bit. They loosen up your legs, and I think it helps. It's not super important, but find that time if you have an extra 15 minutes throughout the day. Do some stretching, do some core. It's not going to hurt you. Number 6 is to properly taper for your race. So generally about 2 weeks out from your race, you're going to want to start what you call tapering, which means cutting your mileage back to basically give your body a fresh reset for race day. If you're running 50 miles a week, 2 weeks before the race, you're going to probably want to do like a 35-mile week, and then maybe only like 20 or 25 during the actual week of the marathon. Perfecting this taper period can sort of be like trial and error. You can certainly over taper or under taper. So hopefully you've been able to make it to the start line, at least somewhat properly tapered and ready to rock. 7 is race strategy. Okay, so you've made it happy and healthy to the start line of your marathon, and how can you screw this up? You're in shape, you did everything correctly, you hit 50-mile weeks, you did a 20-mile long run, you were crushing your workouts, you tapered perfectly. How can you screw race day up? Well, I'll tell you how. You can hear that gun go off and start running 6 flat, 6:15 miles for the first 5 miles of the race and dig yourself into a hole. And that's exactly what I've done before. We've all been there. You will learn the hard way if you go out too fast. So what I'm getting at here is do not go out too fast when that gun goes off. A sub 3 is 6:52 per mile. So seriously, do not start out any faster than 6:45, 6:50. Please do not go out any faster. It is very hard to successfully bank time during a marathon. If you go out too fast, you're just going to hit the wall sooner and you're going to end up running way slower, and it's going to be very painful in the end. Generally, the best way to race a marathon is with even splits. So with 6:52 being your 3 hour on the dot pace, just sub 3, you might just want to be targeting straight 6:50s throughout every mile. If you have GPS watch, that helps. A lot of races have, you know, the mile times and mile markers on the course, but yeah, 6:50 even split is probably the best way to get your sub 3. Another approach though that some people have done, and it's worked for me in my past few marathons, is to start a little bit slower than your target pace. So for sub 3, maybe you start at like 6:55 or even 7 minutes and, you know, run through halfway. You're gonna have a lot of energy saved up because you're not going at that sub 3 pace yet. You start to feel good and you start to cut down to the 6:40s and maybe even finish in the 6:30s and, you know, run the time with that method with a negative split. But again, I personally think the fastest marathon times and the most efficient way to run the marathon is just even splits, as hard as you can. Not as hard as you can, as even as you can. One last thing I want to touch on is your fueling strategy throughout the race. So this is a marathon, 26.2 miles, 42.2 kilometers. You need to take in some calories during the race. If you do not, you will regret it. You will hit the wall. Your body will run out of sugar and glycogen, and you'll just be fighting for your life out there. So typically I recommend taking at least 3 gels, like Goose. There's Morton gels. There's all kinds of different gel brands nowadays. It doesn't really matter which one. Find out what works for you. Try some things out in training. But yeah, typically about 3 gels during the race. I like to target them at 1 at mile 6, 1 at mile like 13, and then 1 at mile 20. A lot of times after mile 20, I just cannot take down any more gels. I'll take in Gatorade and water as I need to, as much as I can, really whatever you feel throughout the race. If you can get more than 3 gels down, that's great. Really, the more the better, as much as your stomach can handle, because you're burning basically 100 calories per mile, and your body can only use 2,000 in sugar. So that leaves 600 where you got to fuel that with either gels or Gatorade before your body's not going to be optimally performing. So hopefully these tips can help you guys run your first sub 3 hour marathon. Best of luck, and we'll see you at the Boston Marathon.